Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome at the press conference following the first Foreign Affairs Council of this year. Thank you for waiting. I know we are running a bit behind our schedule. High Representative Federica Mogherini will present the outcomes of today's discussions, and then we'll take a few questions. High Representative, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maya. We've had the Foreign Affairs Council with ministers. We focused mainly on two issues, as you probably know. First of all, our work on Syria. I presented to the ministers the first outcome, the first results of the EU regional initiative for the future of Syria, focusing with the regional powers on the future asset of a political transition, of elements of reconciliation and reconstruction. An initiative that, as you might recall, we started a few months ago. And we've had just last week bilateral meetings here in Brussels to discuss several elements for a political transition with delegations from most of the countries in the region, from Saudi Arabia to Iran, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Emirates, and we're going to have similar meetings in the coming days with another number of countries of the region to feed into the UN-led process, possibly to provide some elements already for the February intra-Syrian talks to be held in Geneva. I discussed this last week in Geneva exactly with Staffan de Mistura and with Antonio Guterres, so working hand in hand with the UN on the political side of the efforts to bring to a solution the Syrian conflict. We discussed this with the ministers. I updated them on this European Union initiative, and I shared with them the plans to convene in Brussels, together with the UN, a conference on the future of Syria in spring that we could co-chair also possibly with others, that will have two main objectives. On one side, taking stock of the implementation of commitments of the donors community of the London conference, you might remember was taking place last year, on which the European Union has delivered in full, being the first humanitarian donor worldwide for Syria and Syrians in the region. But most of all, it can be a political conference, hoping that that could be the moment, a few months after the restart, the planned restart of the intra-Syrian talks in Geneva under UN auspices, could be the moment for the international community to together turn the page and start the political transition, the reconciliation process, and the reconstruction of Syria on the basis of the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. And again, these are all elements that we will continue to elaborate in strong connection with the UN and the UN Special Envoy, and with the perspective of supporting, facilitating, feeding into the work that the UN are doing on the intra-Syrian talks, because our approach is this: trying to facilitate a regional understanding of the future of Syria, to create the space for the Syrians themselves to decide on their own future. The second point we discussed with the ministers was the Middle East peace process, the conflict between Israel and Palestinians. The Council today strongly reconfirmed our consolidated EU position on the two states and on the trends that are endangering these perspectives, as we outlined also in the Quartet report and in the recommendations that are included in the report. Namely, the three elements I also mentioned yesterday in Paris: the settlement expansion, the violence and the incitement to violence, and the situation in Gaza. I was in Paris yesterday representing the European Union, as well as all the member states were present in Paris. I signed up to the declaration that reflects fully the EU consolidated position that you can find in several EU Council conclusions. The last substantial one, very substantial one, dates of more or less 1 year ago, where you will still find all elements of policy that we reconfirm today. If you want, I can go more into the detail, but that covers the full range of policies and positions that we reconfirm today. As I said, the Paris Declaration reflects fully the EU consolidated position that we reconfirm today, as well as the UN Security Council resolution that was adopted in the end of December, fully represents the EU consolidated position, as we have several times stated. We also discussed, and this was the main focus of the discussion, the way forward for the EU work on the Middle East peace process. We had a brainstorming on how we can try to bring forward the work, first of all, with the direct involvement of the parties. The European Union is fully convinced that only through a full commitment and involvement and determination of the parties there can be a negotiation that is meaningful and lead to a solution, a real solution. No one can substitute this process, but we can facilitate and provide the space and international framework for this to happen in the best conditions. This is what we have done last year with the Quartet. This is what we're eager to do and continue to do with our partners, starting from the United Nations, the United States and Russia in the Quartet. But also, and I would even say mainly, in some cases, our Arab partners. And we discussed this at length just a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago in Cairo with the Arab League and the Arab League member states, starting from Egypt, but also all the other Arab countries on the basis of the Arab Initiative. So these were the main two issues we discussed, on which we found a profound and useful unity that is going to be the basis for further work. On Syria, as I told you, continuing our EU initiative, continuing to link up with other initiatives that are looking more at the military aspects of the crisis and that we welcome. And on the Middle East peace process, obviously, trying to continue to enlarge or to at least consolidate an international unity that can be the basis for the parties to directly re-engage. We also had some other points of discussion with the ministers, focusing on priorities we'll face in this beginning of the year. And I'm happy to elaborate on any of those you want to raise. I especially updated them on the negotiations on the Cyprus issue. As you know, the European Union was taking part to the conference on Cyprus last week in Geneva as a special observer with a special status, being an interested party. And we continue to do that work on the name of the European Union entirely. I stop here and ready to take some questions.